Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking, first of all. My question for you is, you say that heartless, egregious acts like the Holocaust are brought about by people without a moral reference point in God. But how do you explain all the death and destruction that has been done in a God's name, such as the Crusades, the Inquisition, suicide bombings, or Christianizing the quote-unquote savage?
Yeah. Great question. And I appreciate you asking that. The base of the question doesn't change, that whatever was done by A or B were both dastardly things. They ought not to have been done. That's the assumption we both make here, whether it was done in the name of atheism or whether it was done in the name of religion. People often say that religion has been so divisive, religion has been so horrible and so much of evil in this world, and it has its share to face. But let me just say that you go back across history, and when Nietzsche penned his madman parable, he made this comment. He said, if God is dead in this 19th century, philosophically, the 20th century will become the bloodiest century in history. And he said a universal madness will break out. And in the 20th century, we killed more people in warfare than all of the previous 19 centuries put together. All right? Now, and Nietzsche, ironically, took the first step himself. The last 13 years of his life, he spent insane, just in a world of his own, and every now and then quoting the scripture when he broke his silence. If you take statistically what happened under Mao, what happened under Stalin, what happened under Pol Pot, the 130 to 150 million killed just between these three, it pales any other tragedy of any other worldview that has been committed, religious or otherwise, across the centuries. So first of all, the numbers game is not what atheists sometimes make it out to be. The numbers are huge. I'm going to be in Shanghai within a couple of weeks. I'll be there 3 weeks from now. And I remember being in Nanjing, where I saw the seminary that Mao Zedong had burned, and talked to them and the 60-some million that he killed. When he burned the seminary, he said, God is going to be evicted from this land, never to be brought back here again. The fastest growing church in the world today is in China. It's absolutely amazing. It's the fastest growing church in the world today, somewhere between 50 to 100 million. When Crusades and all took place, the religious people calling themselves Christians made the biggest blunder you ever make with your faith in God. And that's the politicization of religion. That became a state church, a politicized church, as some of it still is. And that's why in Europe today, where you see the state church, you see the resistance towards that kind of teaching. It was kind of setting up a theocracy when it was actually more a theonomy, where enforcing the laws of God on people supposedly, but the hierarchy was in the hands of men. When you look at the Christian worldview in quotes that did this, you knew they were violating the fundamentals of their very Christian faith. So it was a deviation from what they claimed to believe. When you see violence in the atheistic worldview, it's very much in keeping with the assumptions that we are pragmatically going to be our own God and make our own destiny. So you never ever judge a philosophy by its abuse. Never ever judge a philosophy by its abuse. You take a look at the philosophy in its logical outworkings. Now, this is where I sometimes have discussions with my Muslim friends on this issue of suicide bombing and what's happening in parts of the Middle East today, in the warfare that's going on. That is, of course, a completely different religious worldview to what the Christian faith is all about. We must understand this. All religions don't believe the same things. You well know, probably come from the same part of the world as I do, that you know how different these assumptions are. So let me give you a conversation that I had with Sheikh Talal, who was one of the founders of Hamas. The Archbishop of Canterbury took me and 4 other men to meet with the leaders on both sides of all the conflict that was going on. And We were Sheikh Talal as one of the founders of Hamas. We'd met with all of the leaders, one after another. It was a tough, tough week. My mind was exhausted by the time I'd finished listening to both sides on this. Last day we were in Ramallah. And Sheikh Talal has hosted us for a big meal, and Yasser Arafat's men, and all of them in the room, smoke-filled room, big meal. It's over. The Archbishop was the lead man, so he carried on the conversation. Then he looked at the five of us. He said, I give you men each a chance to ask one question. I won't tell you what question I asked Sheikh Talal, but it is along the vein that you've just raised. That's all I'll say to you. And I didn't like his answer. I didn't like it. He's a big guy. He could have eaten me without salt and pepper. You know. And I looked at him and I said, Sheikh, I don't like your answer. I have to say this to you. I said, but Sheikh, I want to say something to you because you and I may never see each other again. I said, not far from here is a mountain. 5,000 years ago, a man you and I respect, Abraham, went up that mountain to express his faith in God, and to do that, he was offering his own son. He said, that's right. I said, let's not argue which son it was, or we'll get into a different argument here. I said, let's agree it was his son. He said, okay. I said, when he went up and that proverbial axe is about to fall, God stopped that arm. He said, that's right. I said, do you know what God said? He said, no. I said, God said, stop. I myself will provide. He said, yeah, that's right. I said, Sheikh, very close to where you and I are sitting is a hill called Calvary. 2,000 years ago, God kept that promise. He took his own son up that hill. I said, Sheikh, this time the arm did not stop. I said, until you and I receive the Son that God has provided for us, we'll be offering our own sons and daughters on the battlefields of this world for position, power, land, and prestige. There was pin drop silence in the room. The Archbishop said, I guess it's time to go. So walking away, I walked towards the staircase. I thought, brother, I've blown it big time. The Archbishop came and put his arm around me and he said, Ravi, thank you. He said, that was of God. I said, I sure hope so. I'd never thought of that until just now. So we go down the steps, and the Archbishop being the guest of honor, the Sheikh went but he quickly hurried him into his car and ran towards where I was. I thought, that's it, finished. I'm going to be buried in Ramallah. He came over to me and he grabbed me by the shoulders. As you know, some of you may know, I have a back problem, got 2 metal rods after 2 major operations. He grabbed me by the shoulder and he looked me eyeball to eyeball. And he patted me on the face and kissed me on both sides of my face. He said, Mr. Zacharias, you're a good man. I hope I'll see you again someday. And I saw him wipe a tear away as he hugged me and helped me into my car. You know what? Jesus looked at his disciples when they tried to protect him with a sword. And he said, put that away. And he healed the man in his ear. He said to Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world, or my servants would fight to protect my arrest. My kingdom is from another place. Those in religion who have turned to abuse of violence in order to dominate the world have violated what Christ himself taught us. And I say to you, take a look at Jesus and not at Christendom, and ask yourself the question, what do I find wrong with him? Okay, take care.